The Kentucky Derby, the most famous horse race in the world, is reserved for the best of the best. Elite thoroughbreds bred for speed, backed by huge dollar owners, and trained for glory. But in 2022, something happened that shook the racing world. A horse named Rich Strike, a horse who wasn't even supposed to be in the race, caused one of the greatest upsets in sports history. The Kentucky Derby isn't just another race, it's the Super Bowl of horse racing. Held every year at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, it's the first leg of the Triple Crown, and winning it instantly immortalizes a horse in racing history. The Derby is often called the most exciting 2 minutes in sports, and for good reason. 20 of the fastest, most meticulously trained thoroughbreds sprint 1.25 miles. Every stride counts. Most Derby winners come from a predictable formula: expensive bloodlines, strong prep race performances, and teams with years of experience on the Derby circuit. They're bred to run fast, and they often dominate the early betting lines. And that's why 2022's race was unlike any other. Enter Rich Strike. This wasn't a horse destined for fame. Bought for just $30,000, he was a relative bargain compared to the $500,000 or even multi-million-dollar price tags of most Derby contenders. His trainer, Eric Reed, was a dedicated professional but not a household name, and his jockey, Sonny Leon, had mostly competed in smaller racing circuits far from the spotlight of Churchill Downs. Rich Strike's racing resume was modest. Unlike most Derby horses who compete in a series of prep races to qualify, earn points, and build hype, Rich Strike had relatively few high-profile victories. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't famous, and his odds reflected that. To make things even more improbable, Rich Strike wasn't actually in the Derby lineup at all because he hadn't earned enough points to qualify. His team entered him as an alternate, essentially a backup, hoping for a long-shot chance if another horse dropped out. That chance came just 1 day before the race when a horse scratched. Suddenly, Rich Strike was in the biggest race of his life and the biggest race in the world. May 7th, 2022. Churchill Downs is alive with energy. The air smells of fresh grass, fired-up horses, and the unmistakable buzz of a crowd on the edge of its seat. Thousands of spectators fill the stands, hats and fascinators bobbing in the sun, voices roaring with excitement and anticipation. The sound of live music, the distant chatter of betting windows, and the pounding of hooves in warm-up rings create a soundtrack unique to the Derby. Rich Strike, calm yet alert, is in the paddock, surrounded by other elite thoroughbreds. Cameras flash as photographers capture every angle of the favorites, but most eyes are not on him. To the crowd, he's just another horse, an alternate who got lucky, a name on the board that nobody expects to amount to much of anything. The horses are loaded into their gates, flags flutter, the crowd counts down, and then the gates fly open. Rich Strike immediately falls to the back of the 20-horse pack. The favorites, Epicenter and Zandon, surge forward, their hooves pounding like drum beats, drawing all eyes. But even from the back, something about Rich Strike is quietly remarkable. His gait is smooth, controlled. His ears flick, attentive to every movement of the horses around him. His jockey, Sonny Leon, keeps him steady, waiting for the exact moment to strike. And when that moment comes, horse and rider don't miss. The first turn passes and Rich Strike remains at the back, seemingly invisible. The favorites are locked in a fierce battle up front, hooves kicking up clouds of dirt as the race pushes into the far stretch. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Rich Strike begins to move. A sliver of daylight appears along the inside rail. Sonny Leon senses it and guides him forward. The crowd starts to notice. A murmur spreads through the stands. Cameras begin to swing to the back of the pack as people lean forward in disbelief. With every stride, Rich Strike slices through the field, weaving past exhausted horses, gaining ground with a quiet but relentless power. The murmur grows into gasps. Phones rise to capture the impossible. By the final furlong, the roar of the crowd reaches a fever pitch. Shouts, cheers, and stunned exclamations collide with the thunder of hooves. Rich Strike, once an afterthought, is now in striking distance of the leaders. One final surge, one perfectly timed move, and he rockets past Epicenter and Zandon in the closing strides. The announcer's voice cracks over the roar. Rich Strike is coming up on the inside. Unbelievable! The long shot has won the Kentucky Derby. In just over 2 minutes, Rich Strike went from unseen alternate to immortal champion, rewriting expectations and leaving the crowd and the racing world in total awe. To understand the magnitude of this upset, it helps to compare Rich Strike with a typical Derby winner. Most winners are carefully cultivated from top-tier bloodlines, with owners investing millions and jockeys training specifically for the Derby months or even years in advance. Their races leading up to the Derby are carefully selected to build form, endurance, and confidence. Rich Strike had none of that. He wasn't a favorite, he wasn't a household name, and his Derby entry was a last-minute opportunity. His training and racing experience were solid but unremarkable compared to the elite field. The horse that won wasn't the one expected to even step onto the starting gate, but once he did, everything came together perfectly. The odds? 80-1. That means a $10 bet returned $818. It was the second biggest upset in Derby history. Eric Reed, the trainer, later said he nearly fainted watching the final moments. Sonny Leon, the jockey, had never ridden in a Kentucky Derby before that day, and now he was a champion. The racing world was stunned. Analysts, journalists, and bettors alike scrambled to understand how an overlooked horse had beaten the favorite so decisively. Rich Strike's victory wasn't just a shocking sports headline. It illustrated that racing, for all its rules and patterns, is never entirely predictable. Talent, preparation, and timing mattered, but so did opportunity, judgment, and the ability to seize the moment under pressure. It was a win that reminded people why horse racing continues to captivate, because occasionally the unexpected happens. Rich Strike didn't just win a race, he challenged assumptions. A horse bought for $30,000, an alternate called in at the last minute and largely ignored by the public, finished first on the biggest stage. His story is less about luck and more about preparation meeting opportunity, proving that even in structured systems, outcomes aren't guaranteed, and sometimes the overlooked contender becomes the defining story.